Welcome to Week 8 of the South Carolina Football Preview Show. We're here at the Village Idiot Pizza and Pub, our sponsor. We're at the 5 Points location today. They've also got a location on Forest Drive in Forest Acres. Gamecocks 4-3 overall, still 2-3 in the SEC after a win over Furman. A big win. I'm not sure it was as big as a lot of people wanted, but it was a 41-10 victory. It was better than a loss. It moves South Carolina in the right direction, headed into what is a big week. Without mentioning the Clemson game, I think probably the biggest week left in the season. It's one of two opportunities you have left to get a signature big, feel good about things, can look back fondly on this game type of memory. Auburn Tigers on the Plains, South Carolina, and every time I look up this statistic, it boggles my mind. South Carolina is 1-9-1 forever against Auburn.
Discounting Texas A&M, the only team in the SEC they've yet to beat since joining the league.
Since joining the league. Haven't beaten them, in fact, since 1933. Dwayne, who is our history major, tells us that Franklin Roosevelt was the president. Gas was 10 cents a gallon.
Been a long time.
Been a long time. Steve Spurrier says, hey, that's fine with us. No pressure on us. We're just going to roll down to Auburn, give it our best shot. This is Steve Spurrier, who I think is 0-5 as South Carolina's coach.
Yeah, and he's got a 6-game losing streak to Auburn, which is by far the longest losing streak he's ever had to one opponent.
Absolutely. So you know he wants to win this game, but he's taking we got nothing to lose, we're going to go down there and play loose approach. David, what do you see from Auburn? And first, do you agree that there's no pressure on South Carolina? Do you think they're just playing with house money this week?
Well, I think so, Josh. I mean, obviously no one gives them much of a chance to win this game.
Right.
I know I said it in the preseason, maybe you did too, I didn't think they were going to win this game.
Right.
Just because it's Gus Malzahn, it's on the Plains, and I'm a big believer that history repeats itself, and they haven't beat Auburn ever, since joining the SEC. So I really thought that, this is going to be a tough game, and it's been made a lot tougher, just with circumstances being what they are. With Steve Spurrier saying there is nothing to lose and there's no pressure, I agree. I mean, if they go down there and lose and get pummeled, well, they were supposed to. It's not something that was unexpected. And, as we said last week, the SEC championship game's out of the picture. South Carolina is not going to go to Atlanta. And all that they have to do is try to make this a winning season, win as many games as possible, get to a bowl game, and hopefully win that big game at the end of the year before the bowl game. Right. That's their goals right now, because Atlanta's off the table. Winning this game, yes, it would help them in their race to get to Atlanta, but I still think they're just too far behind the 8 ball.
It would be a tough road to hoe. You got to win this week, certainly, to have a mathematical chance, I think. But regardless, it's a tough road to hoe.
There really is no pressure. Nothing to lose. You go down there and play loose and say, well, if we lose, we're supposed to lose, and that's going to be it. So we'll see how it goes. Auburn Tigers, they had a week off last week. They lost their last game to Mississippi State. The latest victim of the two Mississippi teams to go over across the border, and boy, just Mississippi State and Ole Miss just playing some good football right now. So
hard to wrap your head around.
Oh yeah, Auburn's 5-1, still very much alive for the SEC West Championship and the SEC Championship game. Why? Because one Ole Miss or Mississippi State's going to lose eventually, and Auburn knows if it can just rely on that and win out, get to the Alabama game and win the Iron Bowl, they might end up winning the SEC West by default, especially now that Texas A&M has effectively sunk its hopes. So Auburn's going to be motivated. They want to go ahead and win this game, get back to what they were doing before they went to Mississippi State and lost. And, Gus Malzahn's had an extra week to game plan and look at South Carolina's defense and think about how his offense can exploit that. Well, it just kind of goes back to the basic things. They've got an offensive philosophy of we run the ball really well. South Carolina can't stop the run very well. Probably just going to go ahead and run the ball. It's a crazy idea. Do something, while it works. But Cameron Artis-Payne averaging over 110 yards a game. Nick Marshall, who's the quarterback, is 82 yards rushing per game. Nick Marshall does throw a few too many interceptions for me to call him an elite quarterback, but the way he scrambles around back there behind that mammoth offensive line, he just makes life very difficult for a USC team that has struggled to stop anybody running the ball and has gotten almost zero pass rush on every quarterback they've played. This is going to be a very, very big problem. Malzahn's an offensive guy. He knows what he's doing. He's got all kinds of trick plays dialed up and ready to go. And then on defense, there's USC's old buddy Ellis Johnson running the show. We all know Ellis is a brilliant defensive coordinator. He did a terrific job for 4 years here before going to try his luck as a head coach and then winding up at Auburn. I don't think that you can ever be familiar with what Ellis does at defense because he manages to tweak it so well to what he has in personnel. So it's going to be just a very, very tough matchup on every side of the ball for South Carolina going to Auburn this week. You guys are welcome to come down and join us and talk about Auburn here at the Village Idiot, where you can get the 2 slices and a drink for $5. It'll be a great lunch special. And honestly, you might need to go ahead and soak up some good food and have a couple of sodas, but this game might get ugly on Saturday. Josh, I think I've covered the Auburn side. What do you think about South Carolina? What is it showing, and does it really have a chance to win this Saturday?
I don't know if we learned anything substantive against Furman, because I just don't know that you could have. I think that what you need to do, and this is a lot of what we said against Georgia, and then it didn't play out this way against Georgia, but I think what you need to do against Auburn is you need to run the football. You need to use the Clemson game plan of the Taj Boyd, Sammy Watkins era. We don't want to see those guys on the field. You don't want Nick Marshall on the field. You don't want Gus Malzahn on that headset calling plays. You want them with their back to the field trying to think what they're going to do the next time they do get the ball. Run the football if you can make first downs. Hit some pass plays when they're there.
Make sure they're safe. Go with those screen sideline routes. Those have been working pretty well for Dylan Thompson.
Shaq Rowland is back, and I thought made 2 nice catches in the first half against Furman. He's the type of guy who could make a big play for you on offense. Make a couple of big plays on offense. Block well, pass block well. Steve Spurrier was not happy with the pass blocking against Furman. You're really not going to be happy with it in the SEC if you don't step up your game there. I think that defensively, you mentioned this to some degree, this is a nightmare matchup for the Gamecocks. This is a defensive line that, when healthy, has not played well and is not healthy. The 2 things you've got to do against a Gus Malzahn rushing team is you've got to be in your right gap and you've got to tackle, and that is what these guys just have not done with any consistency. So I think that the challenge for Deke Adams and Lorenzo Ward is to be very simple, be very, very simple, and Kirk Botkin, I should throw him in there. Make sure those guys get lined up. Not too many calls. Get lined up pre-snap and know where you're supposed to be and get there, because Gus Malzahn can run, from the naked eye. We'll watch a game and it'll look like the same sweep, and they'll block it completely differently. It's so difficult to be in the right place all the time against these guys. So that's a huge challenge for the Gamecocks. Special teams, just kind of keep being a trouble spot for South Carolina. You would hope that you break even. You mentioned it earlier, I think, David. This is just a game where so many things have got to go right. You've got to be able to run the ball and hold on to the football. You've got to be able to make tackles and not give them big plays. Auburn's a big play running attack. I mean, they don't have to throw the ball to beat you 60 yards. They can hit one of those runs against the way this defense is played.
Because their receivers block so well downfield, which was such a problem against Texas A&M.
Yeah, absolutely, and they'll be gone. And you've got to at least break even in special teams. I think everybody, including Steve Spurrier, has given up on special teams being a plus for you.
Well, the return game at least. The kicking game is pretty good.
Excuse me. Elliott Fry obviously is going to make every kick he ever.
And Tyler Hull's actually quietly having a very, very good season. It's just the return game is
Mr. Consistent. Mr. Consistency, certainly. So that's been fine. So I should say the return game. All of those things have got to go right for you, and you've got to have Mike Davis, Shaq Rowland, we mentioned him. These are guys who have to play well to give you a chance to win this game.
And Dylan Thompson, you don't have to be a superstar, but just don't lose the game. Just take care of the ball, make some smart decisions. He only took a couple of sacks against Furman, but one of them is where he eyeballed the guy coming right at him.
And one, he dropped the ball.
Yeah, and still had plenty of chances to just throw that sucker in the 5th row of seats, and he still held on to it. And you got to be smarter.
Got to take care of the ball. And defensively, did get some turnovers against the Paladins.
It's
the Paladins, but you feel like you got to get 2 maybe.
Yeah.
And Auburn will give you some. Auburn is the type of offense where they can fumble the ball if they have a bad day.
Nick Marshall will throw a few interceptions.
And Nick Marshall will. You got to make a few. You don't have to be consistently good against Auburn defensively, or you don't. It would help, but I don't think there's much hope of that. But you got to take advantage of your opportunities.
Now it's time for our Village Idiot mailbag. Appreciate you guys checking in on social media at Go Gamecocks and Josh and I's Twitter feed and also our Facebook page. Got some big questions this week. AB writes in and says, do you think Steve Spurrier is trying to put a chip on Connor Mitch's shoulder by putting in Perry Orth first against Furman? AB, I don't think it's any kind of putting a chip on his shoulder or trying to light a fire under Connor Mitch. I honestly think that Steve Spurrier saw it was time to put in a backup, he turned around and the first guy he saw was Perry Orth. I really do think that, you know. Right. And obviously he put in Connor Mitch for more of those plays after Orth threw that what should have been an interception. So I don't think it's anything like that. I mean, I think we all know that Connor Mitch is the future of this program, and if there comes time to bring in a backup quarterback, because we're both in agreement, Dylan Thompson's the best chance to win.
Yes.
But if he gets hurt, if they're up big and can get backup quarterback some time, I think Mitch will come in. And I think this past weekend really went ahead and cemented that question. Nashville Gamecock writes in and says, the linebackers have to show up this week. The defensive line will be a non-factor. The linebackers have to tackle in the open field. Nashville, I couldn't agree more. The linebackers have been kind of a head-scratcher this season, Josh, but it's one thing that I've really been kind of realizing. It's very hard for a linebacker to stay in your gap and protect that second level of defense when your defensive linemen are getting pushed back into your gap. You're having to overcome your own teammate to try to go make the tackle. And the defensive line is just bad. They've not had a very good year. Those guys are getting pushed around. And the linebackers who are trying to stay right there and back it up and try to make sure that they get those tackles when the backs come through the line, they can't because their own players are disrupting them. So it could be very ugly with Auburn's running attack, but we'll see how it happens. They did manage to beat Georgia with Todd Gurley, so miracles can happen.
Let's see. We got a two-person two-parter. Aaron says, I'm still not sold on Lorenzo Ward as a defensive coordinator. And then Steve-O says, tell me we have a shot. Steve-O's already fired Lorenzo Ward. Steve-O says, tell me we have a shot at Will Muschamp as our new defensive coordinator. All right.
Getting that question a lot, too.
Everybody's loving the Muschamp. Okay, I guess I'm in the minority. I don't believe, as we sit here at this moment, that Lorenzo Ward's going to get fired at the end of the year. Things could change. Things could happen. I think Lorenzo Ward's a good football coach. I know Steve Spurrier has said over and over that Lorenzo Ward's a good football coach. I think Lorenzo Ward's going to be South Carolina's defensive coordinator next year, and I think there's not a thing in the world wrong with that. As for Will Muschamp, none of us know. Certainly.
I mean, we know he's done it in Florida,
right,
but right now there's not a position for him to come here and take.
We know he won't be Florida's coach next year. Will he decide to sit out a year and spend the Gators' money? I can think that'd be a nice way to spend a year.
I don't think he'll be going back to Texas.
Probably not going back to Texas. Will he decide that he wants to be a defensive coordinator again? I mean, I just too many questions there. I think Lorenzo Ward is the defensive coordinator next year. We'll revisit it again, I'm sure, every week.
Sure.
LC Gamecock says, how about the CBS folks stirring the pot by suggesting Spurrier as the replacement for Muschamp? I also saw that, I think, in Sporting News.
Yeah.
Nobody, sitting at this table certainly thinks it's going to happen.
What you said, stirring the pot, that's all it is. I mean, there's nothing there. That will not happen. I mean, and personally, from a business side of it, I don't see Jeremy Foley trying to get a new coach who'll be 70 by the time next season starts, and we'll just have to revisit this whole thing in 3 or 4 years.
I think that bridge has been, if not burned, maybe it just rotted and fell in. There's no reason for Spurrier to go back and try that again. I don't know if there's any reason other than just to cheer up the mood of the Gator fans to bring Steve Spurrier back.
Sure.
You're Florida. You're still Florida. You can go out and hire anybody in the country you want.
Foley has made his reputation on hiring young up-and-comers. Now, maybe there's not a lot of candidates right now, but that's right now. And, hey, okay, we obviously know that Will Muschamp is 99% out the door, but let's just say they beat Georgia in 2 weeks. Let's just say. Then you can't really fire the guy, can you?
I mean, no. Boy, you lost to Missouri.
But and still, I mean, obviously 99% out the door, but that's not 100%.
Well, I think that Spurrier. Spurrier has said, hasn't he said this is his last job?
I tell everybody my next move's going to be to Crescent Beach, Florida, whenever that is. That's my next move, whenever that is.
Now it's time for our guest picker segment of the Village Idiot Preview Pizza Show. We're bringing back Joey Bastido, worker here at Village Idiot. How you doing, Joey?
See?
Well, obviously, pretty big win over Furman. We all predicted blowouts. Everybody thought it would happen, and it did. This week, it might be on the opposite side of the coin, but let's hear from you, Josh, or Joey. We've been talking this whole time. What do you think South Carolina's going to do at Auburn?
We're going to have to come out pretty strong on both sides of the ball this week, and we all knew they were going to put on a show versus Furman. I mean, we kind of expected that. Sure. I got pretty darn close with that 45-10 yesterday.
You did, yeah.
Coming into this, we definitely got to be strong on both sides of the ball. Offense has to put up some yards, and we got to keep the ball moving. Like you said, as long as Dylan doesn't give away stupid stuff, we should be all right. Coming into this game, Auburn's a 17.5-point favorite, so we're expecting Auburn to pull this one out on top.
You got a score prediction for us?
I'm gonna say, no, not really. I don't think I want to go there on this one.
I understand. I can appreciate that.
17.5-point favorite. So we'll just kind of see what happens.
All right, Joey's picking Auburn to win, doesn't want to name a score, and that's perfectly fine. Josh, what do you think?
I'm picking Auburn to win too. I think that there are just too many reasons to think that the Tigers are going to win this game. I think that the 1933 win is still going to have to stand as the lone South Carolina win against the Tigers. I think Auburn, something in the neighborhood of 35-24. I don't think it'll necessarily be a blowout. I think South Carolina can run the ball a little bit. I think that Gus Malzahn will be happy to get a double-digit win and get out of town. Give me the Tigers 35-24.
And Josh, as I've mentioned before, I picked this as a loss in the preseason, and just looking at this, Auburn's so good at everything USC is so bad at,
Right.
particularly the running game against USC's defensive front. So I think it's going to be a real rough night on the Plains. I'm going to say Auburn 45, South Carolina 20. I think we all knew this was going to happen this year, but the point is that South Carolina will still have 4 wins. You're only 2 away from bowl eligibility. You got Tennessee, Florida, South Alabama, and Clemson. And you can still get to a pretty nice bowl if you want to. But
Not the blowout you predicted last week, at least.
That's true. But yeah, I think it's going to be a rough weekend on the Plains. But we thank you for tuning in and watching us, and we'll see you at the game at Jordan-Hare Stadium, 7:30 p.m. Saturday night. See you then.